Well, let's follow up now with three-party commentators. Greg MacEachern is a Liberal commentator, Aleem Kanji is a Conservative commentator, and Kiavash Najafi is an NDP commentator. It's good to see you all. Thanks for being here, gentlemen. Aleem, let me start with you. This online petition from a member of the Conservative National Council just spoke with Bert Chen, who says he's had enough of Aaron O'Toole. Aaron O'Toole has broken his promises to party members that he's got to go, and he doesn't want to wait till a convention review coming up in 2023. Are we going to hear more of this, and how difficult is it going to be for Aaron O'Toole to stay on as party leader?
Well, listen, Peter, first of all, thanks for allowing me to spend some time with you on your show today. I should mention to your viewers off the top, I work with all parties. I'm not a Conservative, I'm not a Liberal, I'm not an NDP. I'm a government relations professional, and I do work with all parties. Okay. Now, I will tell you this, and I'm going to give you a good opening line, and hopefully your viewers stay tuned to this. Liberals generally stab each other in the back. Conservatives like to do it in plain view, right in the heart. Okay, so I'm going to begin with that. So it's no surprise that Conservatives are calling for Mr. O'Toole's head this early on. I mean, literally, we're hours after the election. I believe Mr. O'Toole, really at this infancy, in going through an election that was called obviously in a very short period of time, he doesn't really have a grip on his own party just yet. I don't think he's built a wide enough base yet, and we can talk about that and why. But this is all part of what the Liberals tried to do in terms of characterizing and framing him up.
No, but hang on, Liam. This comes from a member of the Conservative National Council. Regardless of his point is this: Aaron O'Toole campaigned on one thing to win the party leadership, and campaigned on something completely different for Canadians, and for that he should be gone because he flip-flopped with Conservative members. How do you see that?
He can be part of the Conservative Council. He could be an MP. He could be whoever he says he is. It doesn't really matter. The fact of the matter is that he has, I believe, presented better than expected to the average Canadian in the very short amount of time. And he should be afforded more time. Okay. They would be unwise to kick him out so quickly. So I don't put much stock into that. And I expect Aaron O'Toole to be leading the Conservatives in the next election. And I would peg that at 18 to 24 months from now.
All right, Greg MacEachern, Justin Trudeau may face some internal criticism too, but we haven't heard it break open if it's happening just yet. Calls for his removal perhaps at some point as Liberal leader. What do you think the future holds for Aaron O'Toole?
Wow, I didn't realize the Liberals were behind this already. I mean, you said it, Peter. The call is coming from inside the House, the Conservative House here. We shouldn't be surprised because in the waning days of the election, particularly in the Toronto Star, there were, senior sources around Conservative campaign were very upset with Mr. O'Toole. I mean, one of the things that really stands out for me during the election is in the first debate, the French debate on assault weapons, Mr. O'Toole said something. It caught the ear of Mr. Trudeau. He pointed out page 90. And then for 5 days following, Mr. O'Toole had to answer questions about their position, which seemed to be evolving. And the first for me was seeing a platform being edited well into the campaign. Yeah. So I don't think we should be surprised. It's not the Liberals. But in terms of defining your opponent, ask Mr. Ignatieff, Mr. Dion about that. The Conservatives were really good at that. That's politics.
All right.
Welcome to the NFL.
Okay. Kiavash Najafi, Jagmeet Singh says he has no concerns about his job security. He didn't win the election either, but he did get an extra seat. But he didn't stray from NDP policies and promises. And do you think that's the problem for Aaron O'Toole here, that he sold one things to Conservatives to win the leadership and then was selling something different on the campaign trail?
Yeah, absolutely. The risk that Aaron O'Toole took was that he campaigned to the right in order to win leadership. He campaigned in the center trying to win as prime minister. And I think that, he did well, all things considered. He started this campaign in a significantly worse place, and he was able to, maintain the Conservative caucus, the size of it. But it is a break from the traditional Conservative values. He said, this is not the Conservative Party, your dad's Conservative Party. I mean, he did things that would make the Conservatives more appealing to people who don't consider and vote Conservatives. But he did so at the cost of breaking away from his base. And, I was a New Democrat staffer when Tom Mulcair tried to do some of that in the 2015 election, and it doesn't go well. It's not just the results of your party, your election, but what your party stands for is going to be pretty important.
All right. Aleem Kanji, let me turn back to you. Aaron O'Toole's making the case, and you've touched on it here, that we could be in for another election in 18 months or so. Justin Trudeau suggesting as much if voters choose another minority government during the campaign. So should election timing here dictate how the Conservatives operate in the next Parliament, or should they be looking to try and make it work as long as possible?
Theoretically, of course it should, but that's not going to happen, right? You're going to see, as we see in all minority governments, a fall after a short period of time, because of a budget or some major issue that is going to dictate us going back to the polls. I think for the Conservatives, when you look at the history here, right, like this is a merger of a couple of factions, a couple of parties. You've got the fiscal Conservatives and you've got the social Conservatives, and the latter really holding sort of a disproportionate amount of influence, particularly on party policy. And, perhaps the Conservatives can take a page out of, we look at our friends across the pond in the UK, and David Cameron's a great example of that. They really repositioned the party around leadership around climate change. We saw that obviously with Aaron O'Toole and his party. Foreign aid, domestic health spending, not so much. These are things that really allowed David Cameron to sort of catapult his position, and it gave him the cover for governing, moving forward.
Right. I mean, I have to jump. It's always a challenge for party leaders to manage the different factions. But clearly, Aaron O'Toole would know the factions he was dealing with when he was going to make this pivot in policy. But Greg, let me turn to you. Yves-François Blanchet, the Bloc leader. Let's get everybody into the conversation. He says all the leaders. He wants to sit them all down as soon as possible and chart a path forward on major issues they can all agree upon. And he says, look, let's look at a timeline of 3 years before the next election, at least in a minority parliament. Maybe wishful thinking, but what are the top issues where the Liberals could easily find a dance partner and move ahead an agenda in the next number of months here when Parliament gets back to work?
Well, I think one of the easier ones would be around childcare. There's a number of deals that have already been struck with some provinces. We've heard that Premier Ford in Ontario is now willing to chat about it as well. Obviously, Quebec has really set the path on childcare. We know that the NDP would be on board with this. I think the Conservatives need to take a look at some of the voices from business that were pro a childcare program. Another one to watch that may be a bit more divisive is if we're looking at a free trade deal with the UK, post Brexit. It'll be interesting to see that this government has a good track record in terms of handling Donald Trump around trade, but now they may have to look at some of the opposition parties as they negotiate with the UK.
Kiavash, should we expect the NDP to be the main dance partner for the Liberals again in the new Parliament?
I sure hope so. There is plenty of areas where they can cooperate, and I think Jagmeet Singh proved it in the last Parliament that he was more focused on making progress on those issues rather than going to another election. He'd be ready for it, but I don't think that's what Canadians want, and that's not something that he would want. I noticed that if François Blanchet talked about 3 years, I absolutely don't see any reason why this Parliament can't last for 4 years if Mr. Trudeau is willing to take the leadership to bring the parties together.
Okay,
we'll have a willing dance partner.
Let me quickly to all of you, pretty quick answers on this question. Premiers are jumping back in now after the election. Some were doing it during the election, pressing their demands for increased autonomy, really over health funding. They want $28 billion right now, no strings attached. And I guess I'm wondering, Aleem, should the Prime Minister ASAP here this fall, should he be calling a First Minister's meeting? And I need all of you to do this in about 20 seconds or so.
In 20 seconds, no question, he should be doing that. And there's tough issues to get through to get deals with the government. I want to come back to your last question. I know you asked for 20 seconds, but I think...
Okay, got 10 seconds.
Why don't you go forward, and I'll come back to my point. We can go to the next panelist.
Yeah, okay, all right. Greg, let me hear from you here. Do we need a First Minister's conference soon?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We're still got provinces like Alberta, Saskatchewan struggling with COVID. And just for fun and mischief, after Legault endorsed the Conservatives, he's taken a lot of heat in media this week. That'll be just fun to watch.
Right, Kiavash, let me hear from you. Final comment.
Yeah, I mean, definitely a good idea to talk to the provinces. I just hope that since during this election we learned from the Liberals that provincial jurisdiction is not the sacred cow that nobody is allowed to touch, hopefully going forward we can stop using provincial jurisdiction as an excuse to not get results for people.
All right, that's our time. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to speak with me, and hope we can do it again soon. All of you take care. Thanks for your time tonight.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Thanks, Peter.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Peter.